So yeah, let me introduce myself. Thank you for the introduction, Pete. My name's Beth Massi. I'm the Director of Product Marketing at Microsoft for the .NET platform. I'm also on the board of directors for the .NET Foundation. Bill?
So yeah, I'm Bill Wagner. I am responsible for the C# docs on docs.microsoft.com. My team is pretty much responsible for everything under docs.microsoft.com/.net. And also on the board of directors for the foundation. And it's kind of over there out of frame, but the MVP stuff is over there. So it was one before I joined Microsoft as well.
Yeah, we were both MVPs before we joined Microsoft, so we're very familiar with Microsoft, actually. So yeah, we're here to talk to you about what the foundation is. This is your foundation, what we do, what the foundation is all about, and so hopefully we can answer any questions that you have about the .NET Foundation. So let's give it a whirl. So the .NET Foundation really is the center of gravity for the .NET open source ecosystem. These are just a handful of projects in the foundation. I think there's almost 100 now in the foundation today. Started out with just a few when it was established, and now we've grown. So you'll see projects like, .NET Platform in here. The latest ones we've added, the big ones were reactive and phone passwords. You might have heard that Troy Hunt, we just accepted his project as our first incubator project. So starting the project in the foundation. So we're definitely growing, and we're always onboarding new projects from our projects committee. And you can see that, the ecosystem is more than just, .NET here. We've got Mono and Xamarin and iOS, Android, like the cross-platform and the open source nature of .NET allowed us to go cross-platform. That really expanded the entire ecosystem for us. So a little bit about the journey. So you might not know that, .NET Core was open source back in 2014, but before that, there was a lot of things going on in the .NET open source world. You can actually go back all the way to 2001, ECMA 335, the specification for the common language infrastructure was actually open. And that's what spurred Mono. At the same time, Microsoft took the spec and created .NET Framework. At the same time, Miguel de Casa took the spec and created Mono. So Mono project began in 2002. So it'll actually be the 20th anniversary of the release of .NET Framework on Valentine's Day next year, which is going to be exciting. But then F#, we know F# started a language completely out in the open. And the web team, the web platform, ASP.NET MVC, started out in the open source in 2008. But it wasn't until internally the Roslyn open source compiler platform for VB and C# was developed internally, but always wanted to be open source. Okay, so when the team was developing the compiler platform, they developed it so that the code could be released. And the build 2014. That's exactly what Anders did on stage at Build. He released the compiler platform as open source on CodePlex at the time. And we announced, Scott Guthrie announced the founding of the .NET Foundation. So Microsoft founded the .NET Foundation in 2014. Later that year, as the sole contributor of the funds too. So but it was always an independent organization. So 503c6. There you go. And then at the end of that year, November, we announced .NET Core, and it was like one library and one API that we started out. And then Mono, when in 2016, Mono joined the foundation when Microsoft purchased Xamarin. Okay, so it came full circle. I remember Miguel de Casa in a room basically saying so Mono had the spec, but had to write all the code, right? They were about writing, basically a version of WinForms that ran on Mac and Linux, right? And so in 2016, when he started to see all the code that we were putting in .NET Core, and literally looking at the code from the .NET Framework, he actually mentioned to me, he's like, you know how long it took me to write all this code? I cry. I had to just delete all my code and pull the code from Microsoft because it's so much better. So it was kind of like a full circle thing. He also mentioned, I think, that it was the longest interview he's ever had in his entire life when he joined Microsoft, which is great. He also was helped us found the .NET Foundation, though. So he was one of the main we went to as consultants. He was one of the main consultants that helped us start the foundation because he led the GNOME Foundation, and so we modeled a lot of what the .NET Foundation does today after the GNOME Foundation and his guidance. And then obviously after that, it's like a rolling. The ball starts rolling down the hill, and we've had .NET Core releases since. We've unified the platform. We dropped the nomenclature core. We released .NET 5 in November 2020, and .NET 6 will release in 2021. So we'll have releases every November going forward, so that it will be predictable for companies to adopt new versions of .NET. So this is sort of just the quick version of the open source journey. So let's take a look at some of the numbers we have today. I'm in marketing. I'm the director of product marketing. Like to create slides like this, but this is all the truth. This is like very truthful marketing. Okay. There are, per our telemetry, the Visual Studio family of tools, we can see that there are over 5 million monthly active .NET developers using those tools every month. And we just hit 2.6 million .NET Core /5 developers. So more than half of these developers are now on the latest versions of our .NET platform, which is really encouraging to see. .NET Core was rated the most loved framework in 2019 and 2020 on the Stack Overflow survey. We'll see what we do this year. The top 5 language on GitHub. So it's kind of gone up and down, but it's always a good indicator to be on the top, on GitHub. It's a good indicator of an healthy open source ecosystem. We focus on performance at Microsoft a lot on the main platform, so that all the projects that are built on top of the platform are also fast. So ASP.NET Core is one of the fastest. I think it is the fastest on the plain text benchmark for round 20 this time, so which makes it 10 times faster than Node.js. And I like to see that on our download survey that, of the people that say they're new to .NET, over 40% of them are students, university students. And the .NET Foundation has created an education committee to start, and an academy to start really teaching curriculum around .NET. But it's very encouraging to see that university students are picking up our latest versions of .NET. Mentioning that. Yeah.
I'm going to break in. Clifford had a question. I worry about the fixed dates for releases. Some things might not be fully baked, but might get pushed in for marketing reasons. Hope it's not the case, but it'll be a big person to stand up and say, if it's not baked, it's not shipping. It's actually, at least from the C# language perspective, it's going to be a little bit different how we hide those things. There are some features that may or may not make it you'll see some things. So if you look at the Roslyn repo, you can see a language status, and you can see for C#10 what branch something is in. If it's in main, it's almost certainly going to ship, especially at this point in time. If it's in main now, it's probably certainly going to be there. If it's still on a feature branch, it's in that we plan to ship it, but if it's not there, it's not there. If we find something that we're not sure we like the design, or we're not sure we want to live with it exactly as it is, it might ship, but under a preview feature flag. So you'll only actually see that feature turn on if, if you ask to turn it on. And if it's under a feature flag, it's one of those, okay, it's a preview flag. The syntax might change, the behavior might change a little bit as we resolve some things. For other teams, it's kind of similar, but it'll move into a branch that's like, this is the stuff that's shipping, this isn't. And the thing that we're finding is that by having a 1-year cadence that just boom, 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 what we find in our meetings is it's not as painful to say it doesn't make this train, because there's another one coming fairly soon. if you go back to when, a Visual Studio release and a Windows release tied everything together, and it might be 3 years, there was actually more pressure to put it in because the wait, if you missed, was going to be so much longer. Whereas now, if something doesn't make .NET 6, okay, it's automatically going to make .NET 7. That's only a year. You don't feel like you're throwing as much away.
Right. And the other thing is nobody ever puts anything because I asked them to do it for marketing reasons. So just so you know, the train being predictable though is also very important for our enterprise customers so that they could plan when they can make those upgrades. So that was really key too. And having an LTS, a long-term support release, every other release was so that it can be supported for a longer period of time was also really important. Okay. Because we've moved to more of a modern life cycle support policy. So the support policies are kind of line up with the release policies as well. So that makes it very predictable for companies to go ahead and adopt versions. And we've actually found that, the only difference between a current and an LTS is the length of support. Okay. You always have to be on the latest patch version, regardless of which one. And those patches are always, they come out every month. Okay. So they're going to come about every month. Right. And so we're going to find bugs, we're going to fix it. Okay. So not that we're going to put major features would be every year. Okay. But patches will come out very quickly on both those trains. It's just the length of time. It's the only difference. The quality of a current and an LTS is exactly the same. We're finding a lot of companies adopting .NET 5, even though it's a current release, because the quality is just as good as a long-term support release as well. So that's good question.
Yeah, the only difference would be if you're on .NET 5 and say 2023, it'll be already out of support.
Right. So you would need to be 6, right? Or 7, depending on what. So any other questions around the good questions? Let's see. So I've mentioned the top 30 velocity. What does that mean? CNCF, the Cloud Native Computing Foundation, tracks velocity, meaning how many pull requests and issues are coming into a project versus the commits that are made. And they track that all of GitHub. They also track their projects too. So you can check out CNCF WAC velocity on GitHub. You'll see that this chart is from April last year. You'll see that .NET is like one of the top 30. They've always been in the top 30 since June of 2016. So if you go today, top projects by activity, which was just updated about 3 months ago, .NET is actually number 1 right now. So it's a very active, this just goes to show you that it's very active. There's a lot of community contributions. It's completely evolving with the hands of the community. So thank you all who's been contributing to the platform. This is really where, this is really why the .NET Foundation was created and why .NET went open source, and so that it could innovate and not stagnate. And that's what we're seeing. All right, so let's get into really what does the foundation actually do? All right, Bill, you want to take this one? Sure.
So there's a few different actually, there's one question from Cliff on your previous slide, Beth. Is this like numbers of PRs, just .NET, or all the other platforms, Xamarin, Maui, and so on?
It's all Xamarin. It's Xamarin, Mono, and .NET and ASP.NET. That's what that .NET is included in.
Yep. So things that the foundation does. And Beth kind of alluded to some of it a little bit before, so I'm going to start kind of left to right with this protection and legal things. When the Roslyn project first started, and it's okay, we're going to write the compiler in C#, write the VB compiler in VB, and we plan to make this open source. Okay, that really changes your thinking and your culture, especially in a big company, around what you do in a number of ways. First, you can't copy code you might find in a closed source repo or someplace that may not have a license that lets you go open source. Secondly, you really watch your comments, you watch your variables, because other people are going to read this, and you try to be very, very good about the way you're writing your code as far as that goes as well. Once it gets open sourced, we have things like if you contribute to any .NET repo and you make a large enough contribution, you'll have to sign a CLA or a contributor license agreement. Here's a little bit of the legal stuff. If you go to Docs and fix a typo, legally that's called a de minimis contribution, which means you don't have to sign the CLA. It's too small based on the whole work. Once you add a feature or write a whole new article, you'll need to sign this. And basically what you're saying is, this is my work and I have the rights to give it to this open source project. Okay, so if you work for a company, you'd have to have permission from your employer to spend some time on open source. Companies are getting better about that, but that's basically what you're saying. In return, what the .NET Foundation says is, it says, if you use one of our projects, we are warranting that the code in it has been contributed in such a way that it should be safe to use. There should be nobody saying, hey, that's my stolen code in there, because we've done the work up front. We put the copyrights on it, so the copyright belongs to the .NET Foundation. Generally, some projects prefer to make a contribution which says, I'm keeping the copyright, but the .NET Foundation and anyone who's uses .NET Foundation work has a license to use it. And then the same thing with trademarks for things like, say, even from an external project, the Poly logo could now be trademarked .NET Foundation. .NET Foundation pays for the lawyers and those things. And a lot of this is even working through into this practices of what makes it safe for companies to adopt open source, for individuals to contribute to open source, and to make sure that we're playing by the rules we want. So .NET Foundation mandates certain licenses or certain tenants in a license so that it can be free for commercial use as well as personal use. Contributions go in and that anyone can use them safely. And that helps the adoption of that open source ecosystem. We'll continue to work on this idea and work toward this point where any project in the foundation, even if it's not part of the .NET platform that Microsoft ships, should have the same level of trust for customers as any other product, right? To that, we're working with project leaders in terms of mentoring, in terms of how do they handle those issues? What kind of coordination do we do? .NET Foundation has a code of conduct as well. Read something similar to the one Peter put up when we started. .NET Foundation people we have some people behind the scenes who will look at any concerns that are brought to our attention and will work with both the Microsoft projects and any community projects that get contributed to the foundation to foster that same kind of environment, to even up to and including the point if someone is egregious enough on GitHub, they can be banned from every single repo in the .NET org. And that does take a particular kind of individual. It's only happened once, I think, in the last year or so, but it definitely was warranted. And we'll certainly talk to people earlier and go, this might not be how you want to behave here. Can you please change it? The visibility and the marketing. We talk about the projects that go into the foundation. You probably saw the announcement about the Have I Been Pwned service. Poly is another one we promote. We have so many, I'm losing track of a lot of the ones, but you can see any number of projects that come into the foundation. The foundation tries to promote their use, promotes them at events like .NET Conf or other areas, and continue to accept more projects. Nano Framework, thank you, that's a very good one. And then the support. So the .NET Foundation pays for the enterprise level GitHub support, any actions, CI/CD pipelines that are using resources for .NET Foundation projects, self-signing certificates if they want to go that route, any of those kinds of areas. We have the meetups that we support here and in other places all around the world. Sponsorships, as we said, the education committee is just getting started. Their long-term, medium-term goal is to have a computer science 101 curriculum based on .NET that any educator anywhere in the world can adopt and use. So that addresses some of Clifford's earlier comments when we were talking before we started, that not everybody has broadband, not everybody has super powerful PCs and so on. So that's kind of where the different activities that we really try to work on. Okay.
Yeah, and it only basically just is about, fostering the .NET ecosystem around open source. Everything we try to do is really about, openness and the community, really, and to make sure, like I mentioned, that we can innovate much faster when we're all working together in the open. So in order to make all of this happen, the .NET Foundation needs funding. And so we have corporate sponsors that, give us money to do the activities that we drive and the initiatives that we have in place. So Microsoft was the founding sponsor, like I mentioned, when we founded the foundation. And today, we have these are the number of sponsors we have today. So we're growing, and the more corporate sponsors that we get, the more things that we can do the foundation. So I want to thank all of our corporate sponsors. The latest ones to join is Okta and Volsoft in the last couple of weeks. So.
And I'll add as you go on, this is one of the things you're going to see change, again, based on a comment kind of before we started, that getting individual members, there are people, whether they're students, people just getting started, different parts of the world, where trying to get $100 from a person to join the foundation can be daunting. We're moving toward a model where corporate sponsors and corporate members do more to help us try to move forward and, have more funds to help do more to support projects.
Actually, Engine is one of the lead maintainers now and contributors to the Project Reactor. So they were they're very involved in those projects. So yeah, as Bill mentioned, we're working on a new set of packages as well. So we'll have those announcements coming up soon.
Beth and Bill, there's a question from Richard about finding out more about the education facet. Can you tell us a little bit about the working groups and how you can get involved in those?
Right. I was just going to drop the link to the education specific one in the chat. Cool. But if you look at github.com/.NET Foundation, you will find any number of repositories that start with WG-. And those are the working groups for everything from membership, projects. Education is the one I just dropped in. There's one for corporate sponsorship. I am probably missing. There's outreach is the other one. And
marketer. We're always happy to have more volunteers. So. We'll talk a little bit more, dive a little deeper in each committee in an upcoming slide here. So we'll go a little deeper in that. Just before we do though, this is the leadership team. This is the board of directors. It's not just me and Bill from Microsoft. I am an appointed board member. The rest of everybody else were voted. Elections will be coming up. We'll talk a little bit about that in a bit. But each one of these folks, we all are heavily involved in the committees themselves. Claire Novotny is the executive director. She works for the board. She also works for Microsoft, but she manages more of the day-to-day operations of the foundation itself. All right, so let's talk about the committees. There's the segue. So here are all our committees. Either committees or working groups are sort of interchangeable. You'll see working group or a committee. Committee is a little more formal than working group, but this name means exactly the same. We have a projects committee. They are, really on top of the onboarding of the projects. Projects nominate themselves. They submit a form. They said, "I'd love to join the foundation." The project committee is in charge of looking at the application, going through and making sure that the project is healthy, has good governance model, has the right licenses, and if it needs any mentorship, it goes into a seed category. So that they might not be ready for a full-blown membership, but we can seed them as well. Outreach, that actually is where a lot of the community activities are driven. That's where our meetups, they work on D&I and outreach to underserved communities as well. So they really are kind of driving more of the community activities. I think that you would all like the meetups you have here today. They have a virtual user group kind of that for meetups that don't have the ability to do broadcasting like you guys already do. They also provide those services as well. Membership committee, Bill, you're leading the membership committee.
That's the committee I'm chairing. Jessica's on it as well. And our big goal there is, we do have one mandated task, which is to run the board elections or to at least do the nominations and get that started. So that's starting right now. The nominating committee is looking for people interested and so on. And the other things that we do is we're really working on what do we do more and better to make the foundation, to give it value to the people that join. You know, we talked about the projects, we talked about the mission and such, but why should an individual join the foundation and be part of it? So currently a lot of our discussion is around, you know, what can we do for, say, career development or mentorship or any of these things that will help people grow. You know, and of course, there's always a little bit of the discussion around swag there as well, and possible discounts, especially for things like training and some of those things that help these other goals as well. So we're going to work with other committees on those kinds of benefits and what can we do to support members so that joining the foundation is a more important part than becoming part of that more active community. And I'll throw it back to Beth for marketing.
Yeah, and I'm the chair of the marketing committee. We are a small group of developer marketing folks, so are not really developers per se, but we do a lot of the PR, all the go-to-markets for the projects that are coming into the foundation that need help. We sponsor events, we manage the web presence, all the social handles, communications like the newsletter that goes out every other month, and we manage all the inventory and everything in the store, the swag store. So we're here to just literally, get the word out. We're the megaphone for the foundation, and we do a lot of work there. Once we get back to in-person events, we'll start back up more of our sponsorships and booths and the more traditional marketing. It's been kind of an interesting ride, I think, for the whole entire world. But as marketers, we've had to have some pretty interesting different ways of doing things. Let's put it that way, than we traditionally did. Sponsorship, that's really where the funding sources come in. That's the corporate sponsors program. That program is led by Readme, and as we mentioned before, we're going to have some new membership levels and different benefits for corporate sponsors. He also kind of manages the technical steering group, which if the $50,000 corporate sponsors have a direct access into the .NET team and can help, steer the direction of the platform itself. So those are heavily invested, more like AWS level sponsors. Bill, do you have any other?
Yeah, I just want to add a couple things on that one, because I think Rodney's got a really good watchword here talking about this. If you look at the survey results, which are public on the foundation website, we got two very interesting sets of comments that are almost exactly opposite each other. Why does Microsoft run everything? And why can't Microsoft do this? And one of the big things about that technical steering group and working with sponsors and others really, really at a business level invested in .NET is to make it so it's not less Microsoft, but more input from other voices. So Microsoft doesn't stop supporting .NET or slow down, but voices like whether it's AWS or Samsung or some of these other companies that really have a big interest in the success of the platform are also at that same table in a very public way.
Right. We kind of went through a little bit of education, like they're just starting, building out curriculum. This is a great example of a member just coming with an idea and really being passionate about, he was teaching classes, really felt like, he could scale out the curriculum and create a .NET Academy. And so this particular committee is purely run by our volunteers and our members themselves. It wasn't spun up by a director. So that one's really kind of cool. If anybody's interested in teaching, Pete, you might want to join the committee. Cliff, cool. So that is, I think this particular one is, we have a lot of leaders and a lot of teachers in the .NET community, I think, that could scale this program out and help us do that. So, And then we have an executive committee. Layla runs this committee, and it's really about just, she's organized and she just gets us organized. We have processes and just kind of running the business and running the foundation. So it's a little more boring, it's a little more internally, but Layla's really organized. And so she helps keep all our ducks in a row.
And then it's also kind of like, what are the rules, bylaws, and processes of what governs us, so we can't just do whatever we want as far as that goes.
Right. Cool. So hopefully we got you excited about different options for committees. We would love to have anybody volunteer and get involved. Here's some of the project services that we provide. I mean, the foundation really, has always provided, services to our projects. Not all projects need all these services. Some already are very, very established projects, like say .NET Nuke, that don't need all of these things. And some projects need a lot of these things. So Microsoft gives us a pretty good deal on Azure. So we get a internal, kind of an internal pricing. So we can provide all kinds of services based on Azure, DevOps and, all kinds of SaaS, Office 365 Teams, that sort of thing. We also have Slack, LastPass for password management. So we have between back office, DevOps, the IP and legal support we kind of went through, cert signing, hosting, those sorts of things are just kind of running the project, because we want the project maintainers themselves to really write code. We don't want them to have to really, spend too much time doing all of this other junk. So the one major thing that the foundation does is pay meetup dues for, hundreds of thousands of members that belong to over 380 groups in 70 plus countries. And so you can see sort of the growth we've had in membership across the world joining the .NET Foundation Meetup Pro. So this is one of the benefits that we provide our, greater community. Not all of these members are members of the foundation, but it's about, building our ecosystem. Thank you all to all of you running the groups themselves. And .NET Foundation just pays the dues for meetup.com. And so you can see kind of the growth. It's really exciting to see more and more applicants and more groups coming in. The pandemic obviously put a damper on some of how people meet. And so that's kind of why the virtual user group was created. So we created this .NET virtual user group, and you can submit your user group sessions, and you can go through, and we'll broadcast them on our .NET Foundation YouTube channel and help out groups that really wanted to still meet.
Can I break in for a sec?
Yeah.
It's because of Clifford's trying to look for how do I get involved in one of the committees? This is something I truly hate about GitHub, because it's just bad this way. So there are GitHub teams that have private chat areas, which is what you just ran into, Clifford. And, that's obviously a lousy way to get new members for any of these. So if you go to the repo for any of those, which is that WG- whatever the committee is on the repo. And if you go up one level, you'll see all the repos, and you can filter on WG- and you'll see everything. Then if you put an issue there, you can do that publicly and we'll see it.
Yeah, so the teams, you have to be a member of the .NET Foundation to be in the team, basically. So if you're a member already of the foundation, you pay your dues, you became a member, to the foundation, then you can go to the teams and you can chat. Those are private it's if you're in the organization, basically.
Yeah.
That's
well, it depends. You can see some of them you wouldn't be able to write anything unless you were on that team,
right?
Which is a separate request. Like I say, I think this is GitHub is not a good solution for this, but we don't have a better one right now.
I'm going to raise an issue, Bill, because the link to join the outreach committee goes to the discussions, which is behind the private teams group.
Yes, please raise an issue there, because that's not good.
Yeah, they're going to want you. Basically, the idea, I think, is they want you to become a member, right? So when you can become a member, you have access to those teams. Probably needs to be written on the Readme. for that.
Sorry, Beth. Bill, so literally you want me to raise an issue and put in there, I'd like to join?
That's it.
And that's it. It just seems a bit odd, that's all, because, yeah, okay.
I know. We would love it. Okay, so medium long term, we're working with a company that helps us provide a lot of business services called Virtual Force, and they're going to build us a new membership system, or actually adapt one that's more or less out of the box. And then it will be much easier using that system to just say, go into your membership profile and say, I want to be involved in these things. We just don't have it yet.
There's also a link on our website that you can, request to join, become a member, which I'll show at the end, all the resources too. So Donna Conf is sponsored by the DOTNET Foundation, and it's one of the reasons why we sponsor this is because it gives us a lot Visibility. DOTNET Conf has been running for over 10 years. 10 years. It was a 10-year anniversary in 2020. It was started by Javier Lozano, who's also on the board of directors, and he started it as a virtual user group back in 2010. And it actually was called MVC Conf back then because he wanted to teach MVC. And then he brought it to Scott, asked Scott Guthrie to speak. And so it kind of took off. And now today it's one of the largest .NET virtual conferences. It's sponsored by the .NET Foundation now, but it started out in the community. In 2019, they had 101,000 total live views with 67,000, unique viewers. 2019 had actual local events, 228 local events with 16,000 attendees around the world. So that was pretty big, but last year it was even bigger. We went completely all virtual, obviously, but we still were able to do community run virtual events through that .NET Foundation virtual meetup. And we ended up, having 131,000 unique viewers that year or last year. So that was an even bigger event. Just to give you an idea, this particular event is bigger than Build virtually. So it gives us a lot of visibility. So why should we get involved with the .NET Foundation? Bill, I'll let you take this one.
Oh, geez. Okay. So again, we're continuing to really work on how to get members overall more involved and have more say and more ways to achieve the benefits. Obviously, members participate in discussions, help us make decisions, help give us the feedback when we need to move. Like, as I said, you've seen steady movement from this, it's $100 to join no matter what, to, well, okay, maybe you can give us some money and we'll find other ways to fund the organization. And listening to try to do things like the mentoring, the career development, and so on. And that all gets driven by committees and members who've joined committees and said, these are things we think is important. And again, that's submitting a proposal, starting to secure the funds for it, tell us why, make the case for why it would be important. You desire, reach the point, this year or in a future year after you've, spent more time with the foundation, you can vote on who's the board running the show. And, if you have a strong strategic direction that you want the foundation to take, certainly run for the board and make that case as well. I think that's probably the quick pitch.
And that's a link actually to the submission form right there, Donna Foundation .org member. And you can, it has a page on exactly what Bill just described on why become a member, and then you can submit, your application right there. So there's also benefits to becoming a sponsor. Obviously you kind of mentioned, the technical steering group, it really is the investment in the platform, regardless of whether or not you have a vested interest in the platform itself, like a Samsung or an AWS, because you build platforms. It's really about investment of the future of the .NET platform, because your business is betting on .NET. So, keeping the projects and the platform rely on healthy is important because it future proofs the investments that you're making on businesses. Like, just like companies like Morgan Stanley, for instance, they bet on .NET. They want to support open source. So we're trying to get them to invest in the ecosystem as well. It really helps expand the hiring pool, obviously. Like that's a very good reason why you invest in the ecosystem, because then your business can always make sure that you have, people to hire. You get a seat on the advisory council if you're at the top tier, the $50,000 level a year. There's a lot of co-marketing opportunities. To be honest, we're happy to promote anybody's stuff on our social, but co-marketing in respect to like working on, sponsorship opportunities, co-working with events, a lot of things that we do is like, provide visibility back and forth. So Uno platform, for instance, like, just released NuGet Package Explorer. So there's this co-marketing opportunity between like .NET Foundation and cross promotion. You also have direct communication with the .NET teams and the project leaders as well. So there's always benefits to the sponsors. And like I said, Readme is working on even a more clear package, and we'll have a easier system and tier system as well. So we're hoping to get a lot more sponsors, because that really brings in the funding to the foundation and really allows us to do a lot more than what we can do just with only a few sponsors. Mm-hmm. All right, so how to get involved? There's a lot of different things you can do. You can apply for membership, like we mentioned, if you want to become a member of the foundation and help us drive our committees and run for the board and vote. Find a meetup, find a meetup around the world. It's like a lot of these are virtual today. So they're running constantly, a lot of interesting things happening on Meetup, a lot of cool topics going on around the world. If you're not on the Meetup, you can nominate your Meetup. If you just want to just kind of lurk for a while, sign up for the newsletter. You can get it in your inbox. I roll up the newsletter every other month with all the kind of the high level things, the new project releases, committee updates, and just kind of keep you in the know. You obviously want to contribute to a project. We have a whole entire project directory of the hundreds of repos that you could take a look at. And if you have a project that you think would really fit within the .NET Foundation, and you can nominate it under the submit under the projects area. So those are just some things you can do to get involved. Besides trying to work through the working groups, you can just go to these things and kind of gives you a signpost to get to those places. There's other places to connect, like our website or blog. If you just want to kind of like I said, kind of lurk and read, our Twitter is .NETFDN. We have a Facebook and a LinkedIn and Twitter, a YouTube, a newsletter, meetups, like I said, and the store. So that's always, show your support by, donating and getting a t-shirt. So that always helps us. If you have a question, there's contact@dotnetfoundation.org, or if you want to get a hold directly to me, I'm Beth at dotnetfoundation.org, and Bill is bill.wagner at dotnetfoundation.org. So that's it. Just open the floor up for questions. You can come off mute and talk to.
What's involved in going forward for the board, and what's the time commitment for a board member?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think time commitment wise, it just depends on the committee that you're leading or driving, and how involved you want to really be. For the elections and for Bill, what's our timeline on for that?
So I am hoping for by August or September to have elections done. So the timeline right now would be, we're looking for people interested in running, and then we will follow a process very similar to last year's, doing an interview, campaign statement, what would you do if you were on the board? Why would you be there? And then we're going to run the election. I believe the election polling is open for 2 weeks. I think it's either 2 or 3 weeks, and then, tally it up and then go from there. So the bulk of the time is being spent getting nominees who do have a clear vision of what board membership means. And Beth and I put together a short document on that. The short idea is to be on the board means trying to set the strategic vision and the leadership of where the foundation should go. and, based on our current finances, how to get there. Because it is still a young organization, and again, financial constraints are what they are. Board members generally chair a committee or are on one or two committees. We hope to say that you would spend at least 4 hours a week on .NET Foundation things. Sometimes you'll see a little bit of spikes there. Sometimes it'll go back down. I can usually stay up to date with everything I have to do one morning a week. Sometimes it leaks a little bit, depending on activities that are going on, but usually that's enough, especially if you keep in mind that your goal is really to do more of the leadership and the direction rather than make yourself do everything. I am fortunate enough to have some really good people on the membership committee that if you look, a lot of other people are doing a lot more of the actual work on there than I am. And I say that more because by spreading that around, then a lot more things get done. So that's kind of what we're hoping to drive by getting more members and more members involved.
Yeah, same with the marketing committee. I've got a great set of folks on the marketing committee that can step up if we need. I think it just that as a chair, your job is to be effective in delegating a lot too. And Sean Walker is the chair of the projects committee, so you don't have to be a board member and be a chair to be the chair either. So he has a great
with Brian in education.
Same with Brian, like we mentioned. Yeah, exactly. So board members don't have to be the chairs of the committees. It's just that, like Bill said, we're a young organization. We have a very active board. So if you are voted onto the board, you are required to participate in at least one or more committees. So there is another question here, Bill. Is there any way to check my membership status?
Yeah, probably not right now. If you had been a member, you still are. We have not removed any members. If you have to right now, and this is the sad thing of, we built something, the foundation built a membership system by hand about 2 years ago as they were getting ready for moving into elections. It's the one we're still using until we replace it, which means there's a spreadsheet I look at to see who's is and isn't a member. And that's a really bad way to do it, but it just reflects the age of the organization and moving toward more of a membership model. So just shoot me an email and I'll check. But you should, if you applied once and got approved, you should be there.
Not a question, but Cliff, I know that you are very vocal for advocating for those who aren't considered for a lot of things. As part of the membership committee, and I'm also helping out with the nomination committee at the minute, if you know anyone who you think would be great for like the board of directors, but has never considered it, or how we can outreach to different areas of the world or different diverse groups, please get in touch with the committee, because we're really struggling to get the breadth out there and encourage people to put themselves forward.
Yeah, and if you do look right now, the current board, everyone except for Layla is in the US, and we would like to expand that and get a more global, a globally diverse board.
Just to add to that, then, I quite often, or did when we was allowed to in person, quite often go to meetups around the world. I've been to one in Boston, Bill, and given talks around .NET, Xamarin, IoT, things like this. I just look for ones that I'm flying to a destination and I go and give talks at them, like down in India and places like that when I was going down there. Is there a couple of slides that we could, as speakers, add to our slide deck? A bit like when Pete does or anyone does a meetup like this, they put up a slide at the beginning to make sure we'll behave ourselves. Is there a couple of slides we can put at the beginning of our slide deck, say .NET Foundation, go and support them, that sort of thing. And if there is, where do we get them? Because it's great to have them in.
Yeah, Cliff, if you go to the WG-marketing, there's a link right there. There's a slide deck. You can just grab it right on the Readme. It says get the word out, and there's a whole deck for the .NET Foundation, which has a lot of slides that I showed from the beginning of this one. It's very similar to this deck that I just presented. I think there's a summary slide in that one too, if you just want a one slider as well.
I'll head in there now. Thank you.
Yeah. There you go. Yeah. Go right to the Readme. That's right. It's the link right in that page.
A bit quicker clicking the link than finding it myself.
Any other questions or anything that anybody wants to see from the .NET Foundation that they not think they see already?
I mentioned mine earlier, I think Bill picked up as well, is because it's very US centric. If you order anything from the store, shipping is typically more than what the item costs. I ordered some stickers and t-shirts to take to some meetups with me around the world, and it cost me more in shipping than it did for the products. So it'd be nice if you can get, I don't know, in the UK, someone like Adam Jackson's team to ship from the UK, and someone in France or Germany, and and other parts of the world. You've got offices all over the world that ship out, swag anyway. So just get them to sort of ship out a little bit extra, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, unfortunately, shipping costs the foundation a lot of money, which we don't really have right now. But that's noted. I think as we get back to more in person, I can leverage Microsoft, like Microsoft subsidiaries. I can send them the specs of the swag, and then they can produce locally. But right now, since everything's on shutdown, we just haven't been able to do that. But I feel your pain, and I'm sorry.
That was really good. Thank you very much, and round of applause.
Thank you guys for having us.
Yeah, it was really good. I mean, we're not going to kick everyone out now. Let's just hang around for a little bit longer so you can have a chat. What I will do is I'll stop the YouTube streaming at this point so you can, a bit more candor.